Hello, I'm Sweetie Biscuit, and this is my submission for Yves' single character, Cadence of Hyrule. This is a 2816 run. Not my best run, but I figured I'd just commentate a clean, no background noise, no commentary run, so direct game feed run, and so just record this real quick, and I'll give you some commentary for it. So, Cadence of Hyrule is a Necrodancer and Legend of Zelda crossover, so you're going to see a lot of aspects of both games in here. Obviously, right off the bat, you got the rhythm-based movement, but kind of the Zelda characters and Zelda vibes. So Yves here is a hidden unlockable character that's available as a post-game content challenge. There's a few things you'll note right off the bat. Whereas most characters in Zelda, you tend to start with 3 hearts. Yves' health meter up there is only 1, and it's going to stay that way for the entire run. When you play as Yves, you can't pick up any additional heart containers, and you're only left with 1. So most things are going to kill in 1 hit. There are some ways to get around that, and we'll be going for some of those later. To start with, you are noting that I'm pulling up the map quickly and repeatedly and dismissing it immediately. This is to keep my movement speed maxed out. Once again, you can only move to the beat. So if you check the menu, if you look at the map briefly between the beats, you can maintain max movement speed. You're still moving on every beat. So you're moving just as fast as if you weren't looking at the map at all, but you're getting some information on what's going on. So first stop we make here is to the Zora Prince. To rescue him from the evil spirits, and you get flippers in as a reward, which lets you swim through deep water. You don't actually need them to reach the frozen grotto there, but it does make it more convenient, and it also allows for a skip later on in the Gerudo Ruins. So taking the time to kill this mini-boss here, because mini-bosses drop random temporary equipment, we get an enchant weapon scroll, which temporarily increases attack damage by 1, which is good. It's worth noting on the note of weapons that Yves can't use weapons. He does not have hands, so his attack for the entire run will just be a 1 range, 1 damage headbutt attack. Dealing 1 damage the entire run is pretty bad though, and that can be supplemented with other non-weapon equipment. And that's actually one of the top priorities at the start of the Yves run, is to get some equipment that boosts the damage. Dealing 1 damage is pretty terrible, makes for a pretty bad time against most boss fights, so we want to get that out. On most other runs, you would go and do the music note puzzle there to get the power glove from the character up there, but since Yves, again, has no hands and can't use most items, power glove is one of those. So there's no reason to grab the power glove, can't lift the rocks with it. The only items that Yves can use are scrolls, bombs, and bomb chews, and the loot as well. The loot essentially being the fast travel method. Go ahead and tag the Sheikah Stone in front of the Gerudo Ruins so we can warp back to it later, and then double back here to grab the loot, which is going to be our fast travel method for the entire run. And while it is worth noting that while, as I did say earlier, the run does involve randomly generated overworld, there are a lot of things that are consistent through runs. The locations of those Cadence caves and the items she gives are consistent. The first Cadence cave will always give you the loot, which is the main thing we care about. And a few chests are consistent as well. That chest is always a glass shovel. Glass shovel, over the basic shovel, can dig out shop walls, and shop walls contain money. And since I passed a Freddy shop over here, I knew that if I grabbed that glass shovel, I'd be able to farm up some money real quick. And getting a little bit of money on Yves is pretty important. Getting a little money on any character can be pretty important, because you can find some good temporary equipment in shops at the cost of rupees. You can also, there's also some other essential equipment like keys. You need keys to progress through dungeons, and they can be purchased in shops oftentimes. They can also be dropped by mini-bosses or found in chests. In total, we're going to need 7 keys for the whole run. It's worth noting that as a single character run, we do not have to do the Kakariko Village, the Kakariko Crypt dungeon, the little mini dungeon, because since it's a single character run, there's no one to wake up in the house. So there's no reason to complete the dungeon. So here is our main source of damage up. This is a something that will spawn somewhere in the world consistently. There are a lot of little small set pieces. While again the world is randomized as a whole, there are some small little set pieces, and that particular little square with the waterfall and the Ring of Risk in it will spawn somewhere in the forest. So finding that and picking it up is important. Ring of Risk doubles your damage when you are at 1 heart or less. And since Yves is always at 1 heart, that is always active, so it will always boost our damage up to 2. It is worth noting that it just doubles your base attack damage, so even if we get like a Boots of Power to give the damage +1, it does not get doubled to 4 damage. It's just going to stack up to 3. So finding the Windmill Hut right now, we're kind of just doing the round-the-world trip, trying to unlock relevant locations, just tag the Sheikah Stones for quick warping later on. Windmill Hut's pretty close to Death Mountain. I did do a quick check on the screen to the right to make sure there was a half block so that I could take the shortcut into Death Mountain later. Full clearing screens gives you diamond drops dependent on your multiplier. You can increase your multiplier by killing multiple enemies without taking damage or losing the beat. That Cadence kit back there gave me access to my L ability, the Seed Spit. Cost a little stamina. You can shoot a 1 damage seed. It's very limited application. You're not going to see much use of it in this run. Stamina is better spent on the R ability, the Burrow ability. Burrowing renders you completely invincible for its duration. You just hide underground, and enemies kind of wander aimlessly while you're burrowed. It's a good panic button if things get out of hand. If there's a situation you can't escape from, you can just press R and wait for things to calm down a bit. So again, full clearing a couple rooms on the way through the Lost Woods here, just to get some diamonds accumulated. We'll need those later to buy bottles for potions. Potions not only are a safety method, but they are necessary to do some skips. Particularly the one at the start of this dungeon right here. We are just gonna unlock the front of it, unlock the warp point to it, and leave. The iron boots there are a nice drop because iron boots allow you to ignore wind effects, which ordinarily you'd have to do a little bit of a slower strat to get into this shortcut into the Temple of Storms area. You'd have to wait for the Moblin to throw his spear here to block the wind pushback. But since we have the iron boots, we can just walk through the turbine without having to wait for that. It saves a little time. And hover boots there, that's a good lucky drop. That allows us to skip through the most of the floors in Lost Swamp with the help of a potion. Again, that's part of the reason I've been collecting diamonds up to this point. We will want some potions, so at this point I'm looking for places that I can purchase bottles. Bottles can be purchased at the beach house for rupees or at either of the 2 beetle shops for diamonds. Preferably looking for the beetle shops, since diamonds aren't going to be used anywhere else except for those bottles, but rupees serve a lot of other purposes. Good if I can save the rupees for something else later. So I did spot the potion shop and heading there to unlock it. And now it's a matter of looking for those beetle shops. Haven't seen them on the map yet, but there's a lot unexplored in the northwest, so I know it's probably up there somewhere. So I just kind of head up there. Again, doing some pausing between the beats just to get a look, and there's the beetle shop right there, just screen next up north. There's one of them. So we can get our first bottle here, and with that we get not only a little bit of means for getting some safety, but also the necessary equipment to do a skip in Lost Swamp. We'll need both the hover boots and a filled bottle. It's worth noting here that potions work like they do in Necrodancer. That is, they will drink automatically if you were to otherwise die. So, not quite like Zelda, where Fairy is the only way to get an automatic health refill. Fill the bottles with anything, and they will automatically trigger when needed. There are some, I mentioned before that there are set pieces, some of which have consistent items, and that is another one. That little square with the Lizalfas in them always will have a key in it, so when I saw that on the minimap, I just took a quick detour to go grab it. Keys are, again, important. You need, as I mentioned before, a total of 7, at least, to get through all of the dungeons using the route and skips we take here. So that one is also a consistent key. Yeah, the chest with barrels guarded by a bunch of moblins. And here's the other beetle shop. It's hidden in the dirt wall here. Gonna go ahead and get my second bottle here. So at this point, I can easily warp back and fill the bottles. But first things first, I spotted another consistent set piece here. This fountain here. The chest will always have a Torch of Wisdom, which shows all items that are within your range of vision. So, very valuable item, helps you find some good pieces of equipment. Particularly, any damage ups are very valuable on Yves. We're hoping to find Boots of Power or Philosophers. So at this point, I fill up the potions, and we go to do the skip here. There are some skips you can do with diagonal bomb boosting. Since Yves can't use any items, the only way for him to push that block down is with hover boots. So that's why I grabbed the hover boots there. We can push the block down and then use the potion to survive the bomb boost up to the ledge there. And using Burrow a couple times there to clear out the boss key room. So now we've got the boss key ready to go, but not going to clear the boss yet. Because the way the game works, whenever you defeat one of the 4 main bosses and get the instrument, the all overworld items and enemies respawn, and it will actually spawn more enemies and more difficult enemies every time it does that. So dungeon spawns will also get harder when this happens. So it's generally a good idea to hold off on fighting bosses, especially on this character. Until you're ready to fight all or at least most of them, or until you have already collected most of the keys, so that these challenge rooms, these key rooms, are less difficult. If you're having to do these rooms after you've killed a number of bosses, it can be pretty rough. These rooms can be filled with a lot of high health enemies and take quite a bit of time. So it's good to get your keys early on in terms of your boss kills, if possible. So it's worth noting that the dungeons can be done in any order. I'm doing Temple of Storms here first, just out of, more or less out of convenience. Get a new pair of hover boots there. Worth noting that any of the items in those 5 square tiles up there are temporary items and will break when certain conditions are met. For shovels, they'll eventually break after they dig a certain number of walls. Torches will gradually drain while in dark dungeons, and will also drain more rapidly if used to burn stumps. Rings will lose durability as whenever you take a hit, so you gotta be careful about that. And boots will lose durability as you move. So right there, unfortunately, I'm going for the killing the shopkeeper here for the coupon. We still need to buy the Goron Locket, which is a very expensive piece of equipment. It's good if we can spend save the 200 rupees on it by using the coupon. Get the coupon from killing in the Freddy shop. Get lucky though, and after I lose the potion, there's a fairy fountain right there to just refill it with. Fairies are generally slightly less good than potions, since fairies don't refill. Fairies refill a limited amount of health. I think it's 6 hearts. But since Yves only has 1 heart, for all intents and purposes here, a fairy is just as good as a potion. So yeah, got the coupon, gotta grab another key, so we're ready to go find the Goron Locket. As I mentioned before, burrowing causes enemies to just wander randomly while you're hidden, and they kind of forget to avoid pits when it happens. So in those Dark Nut mini-boss fight rooms, it's pretty easy to just burrow and let them run into a pit. So normally at this point, I'd feel pretty comfortable going and fighting Glockenspiel, but I'm lacking the bomb shoes. Bomb shoes really help with the fight considerably. Since I haven't been to the Goron shop, I don't have them yet. So pop out to grab the Goron Locket and the bomb shoe stack. But at this point I have Iron Boots, and with Iron Boots you can't progress in the Temple of Storms. You gotta swap to a pair of greaves that are near the start. And so I figure I'll change gears here and swap to the Frozen Grotto. Iron Boots makes Frozen Grotto considerably easier because you don't slide on ice. So the dungeon and the boss fight with Robo are both considerably easier with these boots equipped, so I figured I'd just take advantage of that since I was leaving Temple of Storms anyway. So, the second floor of every one of the main 4 dungeons will have a key in the shop, so you'll see me taking advantage of that where I can. Every dungeon floor also has a challenge room that you can fight through for an additional key. So, Torch of Wisdom there showing me a fresh new Torch of Wisdom with a full durability meter, so I just go for that. And I could leave Wizrobo for later if I wanted to, but I figure since I'm here and I have the bomb shoes, which are the important part of the Wizrobo quick kill, may as well kill him now. So something you can do on a lot of boss fights is just send a bomb shoe in early like that for some early damage, which is really helpful against Wizrobo because this fight is very RNG heavy otherwise. And I get a good fight here. I get the flawless victory, which you can get by completing a boss without dropping a beat or taking any damage. Gives you some random rewards. I take the silver rupee for an extra, I believe, $200. Should make getting keys and stuff out of shops a lot easier. So yeah, at this point, yeah, I can't ride the lift up with the Iron Boots. Have to swap to the Greaves, which give a little bit of defense. Not super useful, but a little helpful for Yves. And yeah, as mentioned before, the bomb shoes are very helpful in this fight. You can attack Glockenspiel when he's electrified like this, but it will stun you, so just playing it safe and waiting for the electricity effect to go away. Get another 200 rupees for my flawless victory there, and that is 2 bosses down. Yeah, at this point, I have almost all the keys necessary, so I'm comfortable just fighting the bosses, even though it will make the dungeons a little harder. The main issue with the dungeons getting harder is with the key rooms again, so yeah, I don't really mind doing these kills now. Get a little bit surprised by the lever and lose a potion there, and make a little mistake there, just trying to move every beat, and I accidentally move into the lock chest and waste a key there, so I'm gonna have to spend this time in this key challenge room. I was planning originally on just going to the shop, and that would be the keys I need for the run, but now I need to pick up one more extra key. We need to make sure we have 3 keys for the Hyrule Castle dungeon. The Hyrule Castle dungeon key rooms are really bad to fight, so if you can have 3 keys for that dungeon before you get there, you absolutely want to be there. I see glass slippers in the wall thanks to the Torch of Wisdom, so I'm gonna go grab that. Glass slippers give immunity to all floor hazards and also an extra point of damage, but they do break if you take any damage, like most glass equipment in this game. So using Burrow to avoid the dire attack there, drop Screeves, immediately swap back to the glass slippers, of course. And with the combination of the Goron Locket and the Flippers, we're actually able to swim through lava. That's how we were able to enter the dungeon in the first place. Ordinarily, you're supposed to go and collect 3 gears from the area surrounding the dungeon out in the desert. But if you have a way to get through the lava, you can skip that, and you don't need to have the bridge raised. You can just swim right in. I popped the enchant scroll here to go up to 4 damage to make this fight a little faster. Base Guitarmos Knights have a lot of health between all of them, so the extra point of damage helps quite a bit. At this point, we're pretty much ready to finish up our general bosses and move on to Hyrule Castle. All we got left is the last boss here, Gomarakas. We send in a bomb chew early, like that, to get some early damage on him. Gomarakas is a little bit annoying. He kind of likes to squirm around and make himself hard to hit if you've got a short range weapon like Yves does. But he's pretty cooperative here and don't have too much trouble. I missed the flawless though because the transition, the cutscene between the phases is a little finicky in terms of allowing you to keep your multiplier, so lose it there. go to fill up my bottle, and then head for the warp closest to Hyrule Castle. Unfortunately, I get hung up on this fish and immediately lose both my glass slippers and a potion, so straight back to the potion shop to refill that again. That fish right outside the warp point there can be a little tricky if you're not prepared for it. Usually you don't have to worry about him on the way up to Hyrule Castle, because usually you've hit this warp point at some point, and you just warp straight to the castle gates. But the way this seed ended up routing out, this warp point wasn't active. So with all 4 instruments obtained, we can bring down the barrier and enter Hyrule Castle. Unfortunately, it's worth noting, my Ring of Risk is getting a little bit low here. I could have gone back and gotten a new Ring of Risk from that same fountain back in the Lost Woods area to be safe, but I decided to try and push it a little bit, play pretty aggressively. Works out for now. So yeah, again, this is the Hyrule Castle dungeon. There are 3 floors here, 3 back-to-back floors that we have to do. Which is different from the dungeons up to this point. The other dungeons all have 2 floors, with a break in between. Although that said, we skipped most of the first floors on most dungeons. The only dungeon we did both floors in was Temple of Storms. And that's because Yves has no access to the means to skip the first floor there. Picking up the Courage Shovel there, that's going to let me move and dig at the same time. Saves a little bit of time digging through walls. Guard kind of getting hung up on the bomb fairy there gets me tripped up for a little bit, so I just burrow and let things clear up a little bit. So we got the double ball and chain guard here. As the chain implies, they can only be a certain distance away from each other. But pretty easy fight as long as you just bait out and avoid the chain whirls. Worth noting that at the last, on the 3rd boss, Base Guitar Most Nice, I also swapped my Torch of Wisdom out for a Torch of Reflection. Torch of Reflection reflects any projectile attacks at the cost of durability on the torch. And right there, just using the burrow trick against the Dark Nut to make him walk into a pit again. And with that, we're ready for the Octavo boss fight, the mastermind and owner of the 4 instruments. So this fight kind of has a little bit of a callback to each of the 4 fights up to this point. Torch of Reflection, again, makes the fireballs a little easier to deal with. The fireballs are a little hard to read in this case, because they can be moving diagonally or orthogonally. I get a little lucky there in that the Base Guitar Most Knight there tries to attack me and hits Octavo in the process. I do take a nasty hit to this Gliok head. The Gliok heads in this fight are the most dangerous. They're tanky, they hit hard, and they are pretty difficult to hit. So, unsurprising that I lost a hit of HP to that, using one of my potions. And yeah, it's worth noting that taking that hit has reduced the Ring of Risk durability to pretty much nothing, which means the next hit I take at this state will break my Ring of Risk. So, yeah, most of these 4 instrument phases all have 5 HP, so a bomb and an attack will clear it up. Now, usually you try and stand there. If you stand in that exact spot, the final phase here won't spawn mini bosses. They always spawn in that exact tile, and they won't spawn if it's blocked. But I had to dodge the Wizrobe shot, so wasn't able to do that. Gyro spawned, and it got a little scary. But keeping it under control. So with that, the Golden Loop breaks, opens the time warp to the future, where Ganon rules, thanks to the power of the Golden Loot. Refill my potion there and try to head straight on with Ring of Risk on 1 hit, hoping that I can just kind of, avoid taking any hits and keep this Ring of Risk alive. But this swarm is going to be a little much for me to deal with. And there goes the potion, there goes the Ring of Risk, so at this point it becomes clear that this is a little too much to do on 1 damage. And I just use the loot to warp out, unfortunately losing my other bottle in the process, so both bottles are empty, and I need to get a new Ring of Risk to get my damage back up. So just take the warp closest to that guaranteed Ring of Risk fountain. As you can see, since the last time when you were here, the enemies here are considerably stronger. That is, you know, the effect of what I was mentioning earlier of the game's difficulty increasing for every one of the 4 instrument champions you defeat. So just use a bomb there to try and speed things up, since this is going to be very slow to clear out on 1 damage if I just attack everything down. But we get to the Ring of Risk, so we're back up to 2 damage, dealing twice as much damage. It's very helpful. And just a quick refill on our 2 potions before heading back into future Hyrule. So yeah, future Hyrule is you know, probably the most challenging part of the game. It's just 4 straight dungeon floors you have to do, no breaks between, with enemies from all areas of the game, and all spawning at a very high rate. It can be very, very challenging. Thankfully, I do pick up a map here, but I get sniped by the bowman, so there goes one of my 2 potions. Gotta be cautious here. These guys can be a little tricky, but not too much trouble. So that's 1 floor out of 4. You look at the map, you can kind of guess where the exit is. So the exit room is not going to have any, it's generally going to typically be like a clean room, no floor hazards or traps. Most often a 5x5 square, but not always. So we got the Dark Nut fight here. Just gotta make sure you don't get pushed against the wall with the shield. And dodge any swipes that might come up. Grab the lead boots, or the iron boots here. Iron boots will let me walk through shallow water and poisonous water without getting stuck or taking damage. So, potentially valuable. Nothing too helpful in this shop, but the compass is pointing me through it, so I just take it as the most efficient route to the exit. Lionel here. This Lionel has a lot of health, but with that specific set of movement, you can just kind of bait him into throwing out arrows that are easily dodged. So I swap off the Courage Shovel to the Battle Shovel. The Battle Shovel, whenever you dig a wall, you have an extra 2 damage for the following turn. It's a little hard to use effectively, but it can be quite strong when used well. Getting a couple of uses out of it in that last fight there. So double ball and chain guard again. Making use of the burrow where I can. Get a fresh new Ring of Risk. Not that the other one had taken much damage. Making use of the burrow to dodge the swings here. And that's future Hyrule. That we're ready to take on Ganon. And Ganon can be a pretty challenging fight with you know, with the mechanics that Yves has. So, Ganon has a shield up for most of the time, and you need to bring it down with one character, but whenever a character hits it, they become stunned, so a different character has to follow up with an additional hit. And as the fight goes on, the enemy spawns get more and more difficult. But you can use bombs. Bombs deal 2 damage instead of 1. All other forms of damage will only deal 1 damage to Ganon, but bombs are pretty dangerous to use as Yves, since you do not want to bomb yourself when you have such low health. I don't attack there because Link has a broadsword, which attacks in a horizontal stripe in front of him like that. And it doesn't work to have 2 characters attack at the same time. They'll both just take the shield down and both get stunned. So a little bit of a skip there I used. If you skip the cutscene that shows Ganon refilling his health between phases and refreezing enemies, if you mash it hard enough, the health refill gets skipped, and he doesn't refreeze the characters on the transition between phase 1 and 2. It saves a lot of time, makes the fight a lot easier. So final phase here, we just got to get all 3 characters on these Triforce tiles, as enemies spawning continuously. So just got to be careful here. Dark Nut spawns in, it's a little scary. These Coffee Eye are spawning a lot of riders too, which are also scary. But there we go. getting Zelda onto the Triforce and finishing Ganon off. It was a very smooth Ganon fight. That fight can be a lot worse, for sure. And yeah, finishing with a time of 28:16, which is just a little bit off world record. As you'll see, uh, I have world record with a 27:07, so just a minute off. And yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say about this. Thanks for watching. Thanks for considering the run.